So we end up trying to make things work, but essentially he was like, I can't do it anymore. I want you to go. When I found out that he was with somebody else, dating her publicly.
Right.
What made it different, what made it harder this time around was I saw her. I saw what she looked like. And for me, as a woman, that messed me up because now I see my competition.
Hey, baby. Hey, babies. Welcome back to another episode of Talk to Me, Kittie. We have our, you know what? You all know who it is. We have Zae Hudson back again because the conversation was so great the last time. We had to bring her back, right? We had to bring her back because you know what? She's great at talking about marriage.
Oh.
She has great experience in this. She can give a lot of insight. Ladies and gentlemen, Zae Hudson again, baby.
Yes, it's nice to be back.
Thank you. Oh my God, girl. Look, the last conversation was so good. But of course, today, because the last time we talked about marriage, and I know the prior conversation that we had, you have been through some hardships in your marriage. And I do want to highlight that so that way we can talk about maybe how you navigated it, how you healed after. So let's talk about that. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
So you've been very open on your own platform
Yeah.
about what you and your husband went through, marital experiences. I do want to talk about that. So how did the truth come out?
Okay. Ooh, so much.
Yeah.
Help me to condense it. Okay, so I want to say the downfall kind of happened. It was 2018, 2019. So 2018, my husband and I, our son, our firstborn is a year old. I end up going back to, we were in Texas. We were in Colorado. I'm sorry. We were in Colorado. And oh my gosh, there's so much. Okay, so we're in Colorado. He gets out of the military 2017. 2017, we leave Colorado. We go back to my mom's house. We're living in my mom's house. We end up moving into his mom's house. So there's a lot of instability there. Then we decide, I want something new. He's like, I want to go someplace new. We moved to Texas, Killeen, and it was for like a couple of months, 5 or 6 months. We moved down there. That I want to say is where the breakdown happened.
Yeah.
So we're living in his friend's house. We're trying to get jobs. He's trying to lead like he's supposed to. We can't get jobs. We have a son. It was very tumultuous. We were arguing. I mean, the arguments were on a whole nother level. Like when we were in Colorado and there was all that stuff going on, there were moments where I was so angry, I put my hands on my husband. And so we're arguing now and it's like stuff is being thrown and my baby is there. It was very, very hard. So we end up trying to make things work. But essentially he was like, I can't do it anymore. I want you to go. Mom's house. That was our first separation.
Okay.
While we were separated, that's when the first bout of infidelity happened. So it was like, it was more than one time. It was like, I don't know how to explain it. It was, okay, we'll just say infidelity in general. So there was infidelity there. So we end up, he moves back to Pennsylvania. We end up getting back together. I'm thinking everything is okay. I get pregnant with my youngest. He's not ready for a baby. We've just gotten to a place where our relationship is great. Now another baby is thrown into the mix that separates us. He doesn't want the baby anymore. So he ends up basically telling me, like, I can't do this. I don't want to be with you. Like, I don't want any of this. He ends up meeting someone at work. So it was then when I realized, it wasn't until I want to say maybe a couple of months after seeing them at the mall. So it wasn't just I had to deal with infidelity, but I'm also pregnant. And my husband and I are separated. He claims, he doesn't want to be with me, but there's no divorce. So I'm pregnant and I'm seeing him with this woman. Now, the infidelity that happened in Texas before, when we got back together, that's when he let me know about all that stuff. Like, oh, I was with these women and I was able to let that go because I had never seen the woman. I didn't know who they were. I just knew he was there and I let it go. What made it different, what made it harder this time around was I saw her. I saw what she looked like. And for me, as a woman, that messed me up because now I see my competition.
Yeah.
And I see that I think she's prettier than me and she has a better body than me. And I'm like, I'm broken because I want my husband. I have this baby. I'm not sure if he wants the baby. And I also have my oldest son. And I'm living in my mom's house while he's at his mom's dating her. And that's where it all started. That's how the infidelity happened. So it was multiple times, multiple bouts of infidelity. But my husband revealed to me even later on that even when we were in Colorado, when I was in PA and he was in Colorado still, um, he was doing stuff then too. So it was like basically throughout our marriage, there was a lot of temptation that he unfortunately succumbed to.
So then let me ask you, when you two separated the first time
Yeah.
and you two came back together,
Mhm.
and I'm assuming pregnancy wasn't planned.
Not yet. Nope. It
Okay.
wasn't at all.
This the second pregnancy?
Yeah, second
Okay.
one was
Second
not.
pregnancy wasn't planned,
Mhm.
but you two came back together. You said you
Yeah.
all were in a better space.
Yeah.
In separating and moving to two different locations, how did you all get back into that better space?
That's great. What happened was I believe he had come back to Pennsylvania for a holiday.
Okay.
And he came back to PA for a holiday. He told me that he was in town. And at the time, my ex best friend, ex, heavy on the ex, baby, because she was a part of the infidelity.
Oh, slide in the seat, baby. No,
Yeah,
I wasn't ready for that.
See, yeah.
Hold on, let me
And I'm
put
so
my
glad I'm in a
seatbelt
better
on.
place where I could talk about all of this. Ex best friend at the time, he had hit her up and was like, "Hey, I'm coming to town or whatever." So they all came over to my mom's house. We saw each other after it had been like maybe 6 or 7 months that we hadn't talked or anything. So we come back, and that was that moment. We came back, we did a little, 1, 2,
Mhm.
and then it was then where we were like, okay. He was like, "I want to be back together."
Mhm.
That's how that started. And so he ended up coming back to PA for good, like moving, and he came to live with, and he was living in his mom's house.
Okay.
Because at the time, he couldn't be in my house because my mom and dad knew everything that was kind of going on, and it was kind of rocky. So he was at his mom's, I'm in my mama's house.
Mhm.
So that's how that was.
Okay. Oof.
That's how we, yeah.
Look, the best friend
Oh,
still kind of
yeah,
got
and
me a
I
little
didn't
bit
find
in
out
it.
about the best friend
Ooh.
thing until recently.
Okay.
This happened, that was years ago, and I just found out about this maybe a couple months ago.
So it was more so, do you think whenever you two came back together when you all were separated, do you think that it was just the feelings that maybe how it felt to be back in each other's present?
Yeah.
Do you think that that was overpowering, like really sitting down and thinking about if we can do this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's because we missed each other. And one thing about my husband and I, we could, same way it was in high school, we don't talk for a while. When we come back, it's like that never happened. So it's like we fall right back into how we were being
Mhm.
best friends and loving on each other. And I think it was just like we saw each other and realized, like, what are we doing? Like, we do love each other. We should be together. But we never had a conversation. We kind of just got back into everything and was like, okay, this is what it is now. Like, we're going to be together again. But we didn't talk. We didn't talk about it. And I think that may have been a problem.
Do you think after discovering or after finding out, after him expressing the first infidelity,
Yeah.
do you think you really got over it? Because you said you just let it go.
I did. The second time I didn't. The first time I was able to, and let me tell you this, there was a moment in time where when he was in Texas, I was still praying for my marriage. I wanted my marriage. He didn't
Mhm.
want it. But I remember praying. This is where the Lord comes in. And one day the Lord says to me, but what if there's infidelity? What if he cheated on you?
Mhm.
And I said to myself, I'm going to forgive him anyway, even without me knowing. I'm going to forgive him. So I was able to forgive him for all of that. And like I said, afterwards, when he finally admitted, like, yes, there was. So I had already forgiven him for it, not even knowing the extent to it. But I was
Mhm.
able to forgive that because I didn't see the women. It was like out of sight, out of mind, whatever. We're
Mhm.
going to leave that in the past. So that time I had forgiven him for the infidelity that happened when I was pregnant with my son. That
Right.
was harder, very hard.
Did you feel he was possibly doing something?
When I was pregnant.
The
Oh, when
first
he was in,
infidelity.
no, because I trusted my husband to a fault. That was one thing I
Mhm.
was like, my husband would never, because we
Yeah.
always had this conversation back then, like marriage was super sacred to him. So I
Mhm.
thought he wouldn't do that. Like, I
Yeah.
genuinely trusted him. So no, I didn't have any inclination at all because he was also miles away. So I had no idea. I just thought he didn't want to be with me and he was just going to live his life out there and I was going to live my life in PA.
So seeing the person that he actually was developing or cultivating a relationship
Yeah.
he was cultivating a relationship with this person,
Mm-hmm.
and you actually saw her.
Sorry.
I'm guessing,
Yeah.
was this online or in public?
Online, I saw her, on Instagram, I saw a picture of her, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is her." You know, you get that feeling in your stomach
Mhm.
like, "Ugh," I wanted to throw up,
Mhm.
but I saw her and I was like, "Wow, so this is her." And I saw what she looked like, I saw her body, and I was like, "Okay." And it was very hard.
So you didn't take any steps to actually divorce.
No.
but he was building a relationship. That means that there had to have been an emotional connection.
Yes.
That was there.
Yes.
How did you process that?
Barely. I mean, I think because I'm a woman, I automatically assumed, I already knew, like, okay, he probably loves her.
Mm-hmm.
And they were only together maybe 6 or 7 months.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I knew it. And when I say publicly, my husband is not a social media person,
Mm-hmm.
but there were little things that would happen where, because I'm checking her page, I'm checking his page. I think she had taken a picture of him, and I would see the caption would say something like, "Oh, this is my new girl," that type of thing,
Mm-hmm.
Things like that. And then I would have his family members telling me like, "Oh, I saw him at the mall with her." And so in my mind, I'm thinking everybody knows. I'm thinking everyone knows that he loves this girl and it's not me. There was a lot of, I felt embarrassed.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of shame. There was also shame. I was beating myself up because I'm like, why do I still want this man? Right? Society would say, why do you want this man if he is with this other person? So there was a lot. It was very hard for me. I internalized it and made it a, you're just not good enough problem.
So you say you felt embarrassed. Did you feel embarrassed or humiliated?
All of it. I was embarrassed because I'm like, I should be ashamed, but I'm not.
Okay.
I was humiliated because I'm like, everyone knows. Like, it's one thing if it was on the hush,
Mm-hmm.
but now people know. And people know her because she was mutual friends with people we had gone to school with and stuff. So I'm like, okay, this is heavy.
What was it in you that made you continue to look?
Oh, and it was that insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
It was insecurity. It was like it became a job.
Mm-hmm.
Every day I'm getting up and I'm like, all right, let me go see if they're talking, if she posted a picture of him. I was torturing myself and I didn't know why. I'm like, why do I need to know? But I just felt better knowing. It's like something I had to check. And I was checking her page every day, all day, trying to see what he was doing. And I never texted him. I didn't talk to him, but I'm looking at her because now I'm like, what is it about her why did you choose her? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm like, how can I be more like her? Because maybe if I'm more like her, you'll want to come back. There was a whole bunch of those feelings going on.
Well, so because I specialize in infidelity recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm talking to couples and we're trying to figure out how to navigate that by itself, like why am I having this compulsion? Why now do I feel obsessed when it comes to this? Almost like you feel like you're losing it.
Literally.
Like I have to at this point. The part of our brain that processes and regulates our emotions, whenever we endure that level of trauma, we subconsciously put ourselves in a state of suffering. Because in that part of our brain, when we are taking in all of these emotions, right, we're processing all of this. We're processing because we're in shock, right?
Yeah.
It's shock and betrayal combined. We're processing these emotions and it's putting us into overdrive. So now we have anxiety and sadness and anger and disbelief that's showing up, what gets in the way of our cognitive functioning. So now we can't think clearly, we can't focus, and then we become hypervigilant. So now we're almost looking for stuff. Like I have to monitor everything to make sense of this chaos that I'm experiencing internally right now. On top of that, my self-worth, my self-esteem is hurting. I'm shattered right now. So I'm trying to make myself feel good subconsciously in ways. I'm trying to cope with this by comparing myself. Right? Like I see this person, and yes, I know that I'm competing with this. Sometimes it can be because of hope, hoping that they'll come back, hoping that they'll choose you over this person and they'll remember what it is that you had. But also, is this person better than me? Am I unworthy? Am I inadequate? What does this say about me? And now we have these internalized messages and this dialogue that's going from good and bad, right? And we're overthinking. We're constantly overthinking. We're constantly overthinking. And now we have all of these negative thoughts that just turn on automatically. We want them to turn off. But it's almost as if we don't understand it. And I don't think people realize how infidelity and betrayal really alters your brain chemistry. That's why people feel as though they are losing their minds. I can't think straight. I can't eat. I can't function. Like that's what people go through. And sometimes the person who's the offender doesn't really understand that. And you can't make sense of it yourself. Why do I feel like I'm losing my mind? Because my brain is in overdrive. There's no time for it to rest. And I am mentally and emotionally exhausted to the point now this is true emotional suffering.
Yeah.
I'm either having anxiety or depression
Yep.
that's going on at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, you're seeing all of this stuff and you're looking and you're trying to probably comparing yourself and doing everything else. Did it ever turn off for you?
Years later, it did. Years later.
Mm-hmm.
Even up until when we moved out here. Now, we've been here for 3 years. Even up until here, I still was like, it wasn't as heavy as it was back then, but there were still moments where, I'm thinking, "Oh, what is he thinking about her?
Mhm.
Like, what if he, when we're intimate, are you thinking about her? You know what I mean?" And it's funny because I know he wasn't thinking about her, but I'm still like, you know, just wondering, like, just that thought is still there. Those
Mhm.
insecurities are still there. So that's when it finally turned off. Now I can talk about it and not feel anything. Thank God. Now I can talk about it. I can talk about her and not feel anything. I don't feel the need to go
Mhm.
look at her page or anything because I'm finally healed from it. But it did take a while to drop that comparison there and the insecurities around it.
And this is the reason why I love when we can connect things from a psychological standpoint, not
Mhm.
just a spiritual,
Yeah.
because the way that your brain memory
Mhm.
works, the way that your brain processes memory,
Yeah.
there's no control that you really have when you
Mhm.
experience infidelity unless you train yourself. There's no
Mhm.
control over your subconscious mind, right?
Mm.
So memories are going to show up subconsciously and you're going to replay certain events.
Mm.
And when you replay those certain events, it puts you in that pit again. Like,
Mm.
why do I think about what it is that I saw?
Yeah.
Because your brain has that memory and things trigger
I
certain
used to have
things.
dreams about it, so that makes sense. I used to have
Mm.
dreams about her
Mhm.
where randomly I'd be somewhere and she was there, or like sometimes I would
Yes.
dream that her and I were friends and my husband didn't care, and I would wake up like, "Why am I thinking about this girl?"
Mhm.
And it would piss me off. And yeah,
Do you
that
think it's
makes
harder
sense.
because you actually saw who it was?
Absolutely, because I think that if I didn't see her face, I would rather have to imagine it than to actually know it and to pull a memory up. Like, I'd rather that's why the first time around, whoever he was with, whatever, we're gonna leave it in the past. But to see her, it messed with me so much. I was like, man, it was to the point where I wish that I hadn't seen her face.
Mhm.
Then it would have been a little easier because, like, okay, you're just some girl. You were just some girl. This was a moment in your life. That's it. But because I saw her and because I saw what she looked like, it's a whole nother level, brought a whole nother level to it. So
Sometimes when we go through infidelity, we'll go to
Mhm.
the extremes just to make sense of what's
Yeah.
going on
Mhm.
internally and externally. We'll try to
Mhm.
make sense of it.
Yeah.
When you found out, or maybe some time after, what was it like between you and him? What was the conversations and communication like between you and him
Once he and I got back together after all of that,
once you discovered it?
there was no communication because it was kind of like I found out after we had already kind of just been separated, so I couldn't say anything to him. We had no communication at all.
Mhm.
None. I even like there were little moments where I tried to update him about the baby, but I would get no response because, he's with her. There was no communication. It was mainly his mom. And I know talking to her kind of sometimes made things worse. And I know she didn't mean to, it wasn't intentional, but she would tell me certain things. And I'd be like, ugh, like, I don't really need to hear this. Again, it wasn't her fault. It wasn't intentional. But that was how I got info where like his mom would tell me things because their relationship was tumultuous. And so I would
Mhm.
find things out like that, but it wasn't any like, oh, so you're with her now? It was just understood that he doesn't want to be here anymore. We're not going to be together. He's with someone else.
Do you think his mom was possibly angry or disappointed with him?
Absolutely. She would tell me all the time she hated it because his mom went through that stuff. So to see her son go through it, it's like, and that's when her and I kind of got close because now we can relate,
Mhm.
on a level. So his whole family was like, "You're wrong. Like, you should not be
Mhm.
doing this." So they were not on his side for sure.
Did the woman know about you?
Oh yeah, she knew about me. She knew that I was pregnant. She knew we had kids. She knew all of it. She knew we were married. All of it. Even with him telling, because there were, and I guess we can get into that later. But like, there were moments where he told me like she knew about it, and it didn't. She didn't care. She didn't care because she thought we were going to end up getting a divorce. So she was okay.
When women do that,
Mhm.
when they make these decisions
Mhm.
and they attach to someone prematurely and someone's
Yeah.
still committed,
Mhm.
it says a lot about that woman.
Yes.
They're still, regardless if this person voices that they're out, we have
Yeah.
factors that are coming in.
Mhm.
Still married
Yep.
and a child. that's on the way. What position did you really believe you were going to have?
Be in, yeah.
Did she ever try to contact you?
Absolutely not. But there were moments where he and I got back together and he would tell me things that she would say. It was almost like, it was weird because I don't want to say that she was jealous, but there were moments where like she was upset. So like there was one thing, oh, there was one time where we were together and a part of the compulsion that I had was me going through his phone to look at their messages. And I regret it. And I've never been a kind of chick to look through anybody's phone. But I'm looking through their messages and I see there was one moment where she said something to him like, so you support her and her stupid YouTube channel and da 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 da. So it was like there was this animosity towards me that I couldn't understand. Like, why would you have animosity towards me when you had him? You had what you wanted, right? So she never reached out to me, none of that. I do think that she had blocked me one point in time and we never communicated. So I didn't understand. And maybe you can help me understand where that comes from. Why would you block me on social media? I didn't offend you. I wasn't the offender. You had him. Why do you have this animosity towards me?
Because it was still competition, just like you internalized that.
Yeah.
Because if a woman like that dates a man who still has obligations and commitments, there's probably something within herself. Maybe she does have insecurities, right? Maybe her self-worth is low and her self-worth is dependent on how he loves her or how much attention he gives her. And so if he gives that attention that he gave to her to you, then what does that say about me in her mind? Am I undeserving now because I've tried to prove that I was going to be with you? I've tried to prove that I was by your side in his hardship of you going through possible divorce and things like that. What makes her more deserving? And also, why can I have that life? You're going back to this person and I was there for you, but she was just a filler. And maybe she didn't want to live up to the simple fact that she was just a filler. His love evidently was still there. If it wasn't, he would have never thought about getting back with you. It was still there. She was just somebody who can fill certain voids. And maybe can attach to the demons that he was facing in that moment. And eventually you realize that maybe I'm not good enough to resolve whatever problems. Maybe she just had a need to be needed in that moment. And her not being needed by him triggered something
In her.
internally. And she couldn't point the finger at herself because then she was going to have to take accountability. She can't point the finger at him because there's still some hope with him. So let me point the finger at the most vulnerable person, the innocent party in this, so I can relieve myself of whatever guilt and shame it is that I'm facing. I'm going to try to minimize this person. But my question is now, why do you think he told you the things that she said to him?
I think it was because it was in a moment of, like I said, my husband and I are very transparent. So when we got back to that point where we're talking about everything, he wanted to tell me certain things because he needed me to see how for him that relationship wasn't what I thought it was. So he wanted me to know the whole truth because I would always tell him, well, babe, on the outside, it looked like this to me. But he was able to tell me everything. Now, she didn't talk about me to him, like she didn't talk about me to him verbally. So that conversation that I'm seeing was in their text messages. So he never told me about that. That's something that I'm seeing because I was looking through his phone. But when we got back together, he would tell me a lot of things like, this is how we were. Like, you thought it was like this, but here's the truth. And here's what we went through. And I'm sitting here like, wow. So it wasn't all of what I thought it was, you know? Yeah.
So based off of what you assumed that it was versus because you actually saw messages. So it's not
and
like
pictures
he can
and videos.
Ooh, Jesus.
Yes.
So, I would have much rather been in suspense than to see it, my
I know.
Lord.
I
But
know.
you saw it for yourself.
Yeah.
So the assumption that people usually come up with, right? The ones who don't have any proof. But
Yeah.
all I can do is assume and think. I'm creating ideas in my head about what you probably were doing versus you seeing what it was. Compare those two from what you assumed versus what you saw. I'm sure what you saw was a lot more worse than what you assumed.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. I mean, I assumed I knew, okay, there's a connection there because you're, you know, and from what his mom would tell me, I'm thinking that he must really, really like this girl because his mom would be like, you know, they just have fun. They have a lot of fun together through the pictures and the things like that. I'm like, this is real. Like he sees something in her that I don't have. There's something here that he can relate to. I thought that it was I didn't think that he would marry her. I didn't think it would get that far, but I thought, okay, this may be the someone for him. He likes this, and he's comfortable here, and that's how I thought it was.
This takes a toll on you, right? I'm sure your self-worth was probably plummeted.
Oh, absolutely.
And operating from a place of low self-worth. I do want to highlight that I'm sure maybe you had insecurities, doubts, worries, negative assumptions, anxieties. And I'm sure that trying to reestablish a marriage and operate from a place of low self-worth, what did that look and feel like to you? Like maybe some of the behaviors that came out of that low self-worth and insecurities post-infidelity.
Yeah. So I needed a lot of reassurance. I needed to have conversations. There were some times where I would just be crying. I'd wake up in the middle of the night crying, like, babe, I just got to talk. Like, I just got to talk to you. And I would just explain to him, like, babe, this still hurts me. Like, do you still think about her? There was a lot of like, I needed my husband to pour into me more than I ever needed it from him. There were those random moments where I'm sad and he doesn't even know why. Or like I said, I would dream about her and I wake up crying and I got to tell him like I had this dream. And there were moments where I did think it made me question my husband again. Like, is he doing something now? There were so many different facets to it. And on his side, I know that he was probably like, I'm in constant, like, what is the word? Needing to reassure me. And I know he, at some point in time, he probably got tired of it, but he can't say that because now it's like, you have to do this, So for him, there was an understanding that I have to, whatever you need, I have to give it to you because I did these. So if you need reassurance, if you need to talk, I need to be there. So that's what it was like. Our dynamic was, I need this. He has to give it to me because I need reassurance.
Which is the normal dynamic. So when the offender, right? When the person who has offended the partner or the marriage has to end communications and everything else, they're still grieving.
Yes.
Just like you're grieving what you believed your marriage to be. You're grieving what you believed your marriage to be. You're grieving your own identity that was merged with your husband's identity, right? And then he's grieving the connection that he created and also what he believed his marriage was as well. And grief can look different from the victim and the offender, but you're still going through different levels of grief. So maybe he may have self-directed anger, right? And then maybe you have anger that's towards him and yourself. And maybe you have sadness that comes and goes because you go through fluctuations and emotional roller coasters, right? And then maybe he has sadness that's showing up as well. It's a lot of things. It's still grief on both ends. So trying to come together while you both are experiencing grief and the offended partner typically can't show that they're grieving because then you're going to start questioning, why are you so sad about this and you have me?
But you know what I want to say? A week after, because when we got back together, he texted me like, I want my family, get back together. The next day, and for that whole week, he was grieving the loss of that. And he would tell me like, because I was trying to like, let's go out. Let's, we're back together now. Let's do stuff. He said, I can't. Like, he was harboring feelings towards me still. Feeling like, all of the places that I had fallen short, he was still upset with me about it. He was also grieving her. And for me, it was hard. Like you said, it's hard to be like, well, why are you grieving her? Well, I'm your wife. But I had to understand that I had caused him pain. It wasn't justified. He wasn't justified for cheating. But what I had done to him had made him feel like I need to go someplace else to fix this. So I had to understand and let him grieve for that week. Didn't talk to me for a week because he needed time to process his feelings towards me, process not being with her and all of that. So yeah, I needed time. He needed time to grieve too.
You know what? When I talk to couples, and this is the hardest part about when we have to dive into why it happened. And there are some things that we do have to talk about, like in that grief, right? For the person who has offended, the dynamics or the foundation, the marriage or the relationship, the hardest conversation is now what is still keeping you connected, right? Because now you have certain triggers and there are certain memories that you're holding on to, right? So I'm grieving this connection and I still have these familiar places that we possibly went to together, probably still have text messages, probably still have pictures and things like that. And I want my marriage, but I did create an attachment with
Yep.
this person.
Mhm.
And this attachment still filled certain voids
Yep.
and met certain needs.
Mhm.
So as I'm grieving this attachment and I'm trying to fix this over here,
Yeah.
I still have these memories that I can't quite let go of yet because it reminds me of a time where
Mhm.
maybe I did have a little more peace, or maybe when
Yeah.
I did have these needs met. And
Mhm.
I can't be selfish
Yeah.
in my marriage and say, I need you to meet these
Yep.
needs now.
Mhm.
Because now I have to question, am I deserving of you meeting
Yeah.
these needs?
Yeah.
I have to put in the extra work to fix this when I can easily run and
Yes.
just go back to what it is
Yep.
that I knew.
Mhm.
And prioritizing that commitment is a
Yeah.
lot. We can't justify cheating. That's absolutely, we
Right.
can't do that.
Mhm.
But we can at least try to understand what each person is going through. Because
Mhm.
if you're choosing to move forward, it's levels,
Yeah.
right? We
Mhm.
can easily say, okay, well, what did this person do to get you to this place
Yeah.
of infidelity, to make you want to have an outside or extramarital affair?
Mhm.
We can absolutely do it. And we have to. We always have to identify what the cause was.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's simply just a temptation. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's me being weak in that moment.
Yes. Mhm.
Sometimes it's the excitement that's still there. And he sounds like he was pretty young, right? 20s?
Yeah, I mean, that was 2019 when that happened, so yeah,
Mhm.
a couple years ago.
So that was early,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
That was early. And he admitted to you that he was pretty much trying to run from you
Oh,
at
absolutely.
one
My
moment.
husband and I had a very long conversation about all of it
Mhm.
and realizing what it stemmed from. And, you know, because he went through that, but he also had a moment of deliverance where he told me everything. So it wasn't even just what I already knew, but it was a lot of different things where he realized he was being weak as a man.
Mhm.
And so he confided in me about all of it.
I had a couple once, and I remember this one. I can remember everything vividly, verbatim.
Mhm.
One of the hardest sessions that I've had because we had to talk about
Yeah.
everything.
Mm.
Now, of course, there are some things that we won't talk about because some things you absolutely should not relive,
Right.
right? There's
Mhm.
some questions you probably should never know the
Right.
answers to,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
Um, and I remember, and this was the woman who was cheated on in this,
Mm.
and he actually had an affair for about 3 years. He had an
Oh,
affair with somebody for about 3 years.
mm,
And I remember when he had that moment to where he's like, I have to be honest.
yeah.
He felt safe enough to do it in front of me.
Mm,
And he's like, I have to be honest. And he laid out so many things that she had questions
yeah.
and so many questions that she asked. And he never felt safe enough to tell her. He never could
Mm,
get to that place of vulnerability. So he said it in front of me. And I remember the pain. She let out
mm.
one of the hardest screams. I'm getting
Oh my
goosebumps talking about it.
gosh.
She let out the hardest scream. It just was so much to take in because you can feel her pain.
Yeah.
You felt it and you can see the sadness in him. It was like a moment of relief, but it was also a moment of fear
Yes.
from here because it's like I want to have this vulnerable moment, but I'm already
Mhm.
afraid of what your reaction is going to be.
Yes.
And it was too much for her to take. And like the scream that she let out was as if she just saw somebody die
Mm,
in front of her.
my
The most high
goodness.
pitched scream, and it carried for a minute. And I was shocked. I didn't know what to do or say because I can't even console you. You have to let this
Yeah.
out. And I remember the face that he made. It's almost like guilt and shame just rest in his
Yeah.
stomach.
That was my husband.
His face went pale
Mhm.
because he had to look at her and realize the hurt that he
Yeah.
caused, all of these things that she didn't know,
Mhm.
but she had questions to and she asked them.
Yeah.
But he couldn't tell him. He couldn't tell her. And I remember I had to let her walk for about 15, 20 minutes. We
Mm,
had to come back. I just go for a walk, come back.
yeah.
And when she came in, her face was just, oh my God, it was just wet. Her hair was wet. That's how hard she cried.
Oh
Like the
my
bottom of her
goodness.
hair was wet. That's how bad she cried. And I remember when I had the conversation with the both of them, and I had to ask him because these are questions that she had been asking.
Yeah.
And I had to ask him, what was the reason why you never gave those answers? And he told me, he said, I didn't want her to see me as who I was in that moment.
Mm,
He was trying to protect her from his idea of what a monster was in
mm.
him. He thought he was protecting her,
Yeah.
but he wasn't.
Sounds like my husband.
And the
Mhm.
problem is that I remember her words. She said, that's not the monster I was afraid of actually seeing. She said, this is the monster now because you hid more from me. It was so much to take in. And that's the hardest thing of working with couples through infidelity is when we have to lay it out on the table. Now that it's all here, she is going to have a different perception of you. How she feels towards you is going to be different. They swept a lot under the rug and they thought it was okay until it came out. And I warned them before. I said, it's going, as we pull things that are under the rug, as we bring it to the surface, it's going to make you feel like you want to end it. It's going to make you feel like you have to be done because that's the suffering you go through at first. Until we start getting to those moments to where we can say, okay, the only way you can reconcile is if the truth is out. And you truly can forgive this person. What are forgivable offenses? Do you feel like you forgave him totally?
Yeah, I have. And it's so funny you say that. The moment that I had that moment. And it wasn't like I told you a couple of months ago, my husband went through that moment I was telling you where he found the Lord. It was that. And he was like, babe, I got to tell you some stuff. Like, we just got to talk. And I was like, what, babe? Now, like I said, my husband and I are very transparent. So I know my husband's whole life. But there were things that he hadn't told me. So we sat down that night in the bed and he tells me everything. And even afterwards, he said, babe, I'm so glad. I feel so much better now that I've told you everything. I just gave him the time. I gave him the space. And it wasn't until a couple minutes later where it hit me. And I thought about everything and I was like, oh my gosh. And I realized what the reality of it was. All these years, my husband was struggling with things and doing things, and I had no idea. And I had that same thing. I'm like, babe, I wish you would have told me instead. One thing I've always told my husband is, if you feel like you're in a place where you want to cheat and you have these temptations, tell me. I'd rather you tell me first than to go out and do it. But like that woman's husband said, it was more so, I felt like it was better. It would be better if you just didn't know. I was going to take it to the grave type of thing. Even the thing with my best friend, he wasn't going to tell me. It hurt him and it hurts him to see me hurt. So he thought, if I don't tell her, I'm protecting her. I'm protecting you. But it ate him up more than he was expecting. So we had that moment and now I'm grieving. So the roles switched. Now he feels relief because he's told me everything, but now I'm grieving. Now I'm like, oh my gosh. And it was things that I had already known, but the newer things that were added on, I'm like, wow, like I didn't expect this. I will say I didn't have a moment where I thought I got to get out of here. I just thought, number one, I'm glad that you were vulnerable enough to tell me. Number two, now it's like, okay, Lord, help me to forgive my husband. And it was only with the help of the Lord that I was able to do it. That was the only way. Because even me being able to sit there and listen to him without crying or screaming or judging him, I knew it was the Lord composing me because he needed that safe space. He didn't have that with anybody. So he needed that space to get through all of that. He was dealing with shame. He was dealing with guilt. Even now he deals with that. Even now, I think some people look at infidelity and they look at the cheater and think they'll never change. They don't feel sorry for it. Oh my gosh, they do. That guilt and that shame eats them alive.
The guilt never goes away.
Yes, and it'll affect the way that they treat you. And you think, oh, they're doing this because they don't like me. Really, it's because they don't know how to deal with you knowing what they've done. Do I even deserve her love? Do I deserve?
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's a lot.
It's crazy how roles reverse so much from back and forth in those situations.
Yeah.
You gave him a moment, you gave him a safe space to be able to open up about things that he was feeling the guilt of.
Yeah.
Things that will make him have to sit in that shame and will make you see him differently.
Yeah.
Many people can't do that.
Yeah, it's
Many
hard.
people struggle with that because that means I have to sit still.
Yes.
And I have to take in this. And as I'm taking this in, I can't internalize all of this stuff, right? Because if I internalize it, I'm going to
start crying.
right?
Yep.
And I don't want to take away
Yeah.
from this moment.
Yep.
That had to have been so difficult for you to let him have the moment and not take away, because I can only imagine what you were going through internally.
I literally sat there. I said, it's okay, babe, go ahead. Keep talking. I laid there. I didn't cry. I just listened to him. I just let him. And when he was done, he just held me. And he was just like, thank you. You know, like I feel so much better. Like, thank you for giving me this space to talk about this, because it had been pent up for years. Because mind you, all of this started 2017 till now, you know, going through all these different things, because there were some temptations where there wasn't infidelity attached, but there were struggles like with pornography, that spirit of lust, all of that stuff is on him and is heavy. And here's how that spirit affected his decisions. So there was a lot there, but I felt I was proud of myself for giving my husband the space, because I know that I was hurting, but I know he was too. Holding that stuff probably hurt him more than how I felt, than the infidelity for me, because there's a lot of shame there and guilt, and there are these struggles. As a man, he's already struggling with the pornography and the lust and feeling less of a man. So there's all of that, so he's hurting just as much as I am. It's packaged differently.
Sometimes it's not that it's not the safety in a partner. Sometimes it's the safety that's not in the marriage, right? Sometimes our own fears make us feel as though the marital foundation is not safe. Because we already have fears, right? And preconceived notions that are there. That moment of vulnerability that he had with you, do you feel like it helped you all become more emotionally close?
Yeah, I do. Because now I feel like he can tell me anything. I can tell him anything. There was a moment, because I don't want to vilify my husband, right? There was a moment where I didn't feel like I was getting what I needed. And I said, babe, I've been having thoughts about being with other men. And I told him, because I would rather tell him than to go do something about it. I said, babe, and I've never struggled with that, but I was. And I said, I'm having these thoughts. Like, I see these men and I'm like, what would it be like to be with them? And at the time he's like, okay, like, there wasn't like, oh, thank you for telling me, but we were open with each other. And so now we're able to talk about these things. Even when he's struggling with the lust, he's able to come to me and say, babe, I struggled. I messed up. There was a moment that we had where he was just holding me like, babe, I feel like I'm failing you. I feel like I'm failing God because I'm struggling with these things. I don't want to do those things. I don't want those things. I want you. I want to be here, but I'm struggling. And that takes a lot of strength as a woman, like you said, to not internalize it and think, this is a me problem. He's struggling with this because I'm not good enough or I'm not filling a void. There are some battles that they have to fight alone. There are some battles that have absolutely nothing to do with you, but it'll affect you. Like, you'll be like collateral damage because of proximity. And that's what I've had to learn over time. Like, this is not you, Zae. He is struggling and he needs prayer. And so, yeah.
The hard thing is when people, because we go through stages, especially in marriage, right? You see this a lot. So at first you have the romance, right? You have the romantic love and everything feels euphoric. It feels just great. The love is heavy, right? And it's really more of the feelings, right? We have a fantasy and we're living this fantasy, this idea that we created. And then we get to this stage of disillusionment. And that's when we realize that you're not the perfect person that I thought that you were. You are not the idea that I created of you. And now I have to really see the flaws and the imperfections and the differences that we have. And I have to see if we're still aligned. And that can go for years and years on time. And then you get to this place you start questioning your happiness. Like, am I really happy? Like, do I really love you? Is this where I want to be? And then of course we do start sometimes fantasizing about what it would be if we were single, of what it would be like if we were with somebody else. Many marriages struggle because once they get to that place of disengaging, they have to figure out if they're going to be disengaged from one another and be miserable in it. Or am I going to completely disengage and detach from you and leave? But you see, because of all the factors, kids, assets, homes, things that we have together, time, history, some people will stay and be miserable. It takes a lot for you to be so intentional, right? You have to place conscious effort in it to say that I can find my happiness again, but it's going to take me to find my happiness. Many times we see when people come from infidelity, they feel like this person's responsible
For my
now
happiness now.
for making me happy. So I'm sure you possibly felt that, right? In those moments where you're like, I need this reassurance. I need I need to be reaffirmed. I need to know that you're here. And I'm sure you probably leaned more into him to create that security. But how did you create security for yourself?
So to that, I want to say I learned early on the hard way that my husband is not responsible for my happiness. And I learned because he became so burdened in the beginning of our marriage because I was expecting him to fill my cup when I needed to fill it. Why don't you tell me that I'm beautiful all the time? Why don't you do X, Y, and Z? And he, I realized he has to love himself too. So he has a cup. He got to give some to himself, but you expecting it all. I think having that realization early on helped me to not get to that point when I found out about the infidelity to like, oh, he is expecting this from me. Because then I realized, look, it is not a you thing. Yes, it happened to you. Yeah, maybe you hurt him and some things happened, but you got to learn how to love yourself. You got to learn how to reassure yourself. Like, I can't expect that from him all the time. So I want to say that was the plus of it. I wasn't expecting that of him too much, but I did know it was still necessary. It was necessary, but it was important to find a balance to where, okay, he's doing it because like, okay, you need this little bit of reassurance. But after a while, it became Zae, this is a you problem. How much more can he say that he doesn't love her and doesn't want to be with her? Because after a point in time, he will get fed up. Right. So now it's like, Zae, you're going to have to take what he says and you're going to have to trust that again. And that's a me problem. I got to worry about that.
Okay. So a lot of people don't have that. That is a blessing for you because, you know, some people don't know how to find security within themselves. I'm sure you all have had to have conversations about what led up to the infidelity.
Yeah.
Do you feel like there was anything from your part, and we're not justifying it,
yes,
but do you feel like there was anything from your part that probably encouraged him to seek outside of his marriage?
Absolutely. I wasn't allowing my husband to lead. So I know that early on, my husband with me, he probably didn't feel needed. He didn't feel like a man because I wasn't allowing him to take that position because, again, I saw that he couldn't really manage his money well. And I saw he wasn't making the best decisions. So when he had an idea to do something, I'm thinking I'm right for saying, well, no, babe, we need to do this because this is the best way. Not realizing that's hurting him. So it was not allowing him to lead. There were decisions that he had made for me because of I wanted to be comfortable that cost him money. And we've had that conversation where he said, well, here's why, you know, like you were costing me money and all these different things. So of course, and like you said, it's not saying that it's okay, but I had to realize like I did hurt him. And that was why. Not that it was good, but I'm thinking I was being a good wife. I'm taking care of the kids. I'm cooking for you. I'm doing all these different things. Like I'm not doing nothing wrong. But I was attacking his manhood. I wasn't allowing him to, I wasn't submitting to him. So I thought the submitting was just, I'm going to serve you your food and I'm going to be your wife and I'm going to please you. But there was so much more to it that I didn't know about. So that's what it was.
How do you think, was it just the experiences that taught you what submission was, or was it God?
It was the Lord. It was God reading the word. And like I said, I don't want to be a Bible thumper, but it really taught me how I needed to be for my husband. The Bible talks about allowing our husbands to lead. It says, even if he doesn't know, what's supposed to happen is my disposition, my demeanor is supposed to allow him to see the God in me. It's going to allow him to see how he's supposed to lead. So I understood that true submission to my husband is submitting to God. If I submit to God first, God will help my husband and show him how to lead me. If I submit to God, God shows me how to pray for my husband, how to submit, how to help him to be a man. Before I was doing it in my own strength. I see you're struggling here. You can't do this, babe. Let me help you. He needs to learn and make those mistakes on his own and figure it out on his own. So I sent that apology text to him and he was like, I thank you so much. That was in 2018 when I apologized for not allowing him to be a man. I wasn't submitted to him. And now I'm like, you know.
Come on, strength of a God-fearing woman.
Yes. Yeah. God, and that's the hard part. Submitting, not giving an opinion, like I said in the other episode, not being so quick to give an opinion. Because, yeah, you may know the right way to do it, but our men need to know that we trust them because they are men. They are natural providers. They are natural problem solvers. They want the solution to everything. They have to, you know, take that position. If they know that we're going to trust them, I think it gives them a little bit more peace. You know what I mean? It helps them to see that we're their partners and we're not trying to be the head, you know? So that is hard. It's very, very hard. But I learned that's what's necessary.
Did he see any good models of a man
in his life? Let me tell you about my husband. My husband grew up a Jehovah's Witness. And his dad was not around. His mom and his dad broke up when they were very, very young.
Got it.
They were going to get married. It didn't happen. So he doesn't have, the only role model that he had was his grandfather, but his grandfather was a Jehovah's Witness. So the foundation to anything was already messed up. It wasn't there. So he came into marriage knowing that marriage was sacred, but not knowing how to be a man, not knowing how to be a husband. He learned from seeing his grandfather, who wasn't the best example, unfortunately. So he's doing this ad hoc, you know, like whatever I feel, I think this is best. I think I should do this. We learned together. We were growing together, literally, because he didn't have that.
You know, I've worked with a lot of clients and a lot of couples who are Jehovah's Witness. I've worked with a lot of them who actually left.
As they should.
And I've worked with a couple who were actually put out as well. And I will say that their dynamics are different.
Yes. And
now, this is not everyone.
Yeah.
But what they teach is different. And I've seen a lot of the men and that come from a Jehovah's Witness, come from that background, the way they actually treat their wives. And some of that is where fears come from as well in the daughters and things like that, those who have to grow into adulthood or are called to be wives. And it's like, I seen the way my father treated my mother, treating my mother like she was less than him, like she was only good for domestic labor within the home. And that's one thing that you will see. I see that as a problem as well for people who have like different cultures, different religions, things like that. It can definitely show up. I know it's hard for us to be women.
Yeah.
But being a man with no model of
Can't even fathom
leadership.
it. Yeah.
So I don't have a good model of what it takes to be a husband.
Right.
But I'm called to be a husband, but I don't have a good model of it. I don't really have a close relationship with God. I'm not really in the word to be able to pay attention to what the Bible tells me to do, to be a leader, to be a husband. I don't have that foundation. So then I look at other people, right? And I try to see, like, what does leadership look like to you? But this is not a good example. So then I take in these influences. Then I hear the bad things, and society is teaching men the wrong things about relationships. Society is teaching men to run from relationships. Or that you're supposed to do certain things with this many women. You're supposed to have this many women to make you a man and things like that. And not actually having ways to cope with the internal conflict for men as well. Men don't have the same safety in our friends like we have.
That's right. I just had
in
that
our friends, right?
Yep.
They don't have the same safety.
Yeah.
I can't really tell my homeboy as a man that this is what I'm going through in my marriage. I can't really have this vulnerable moment. I can't do that. We're supposed to just be hanging out and having a good time and talking about things that make us more manly.
Yep.
I can't have these conversations, but I can't develop these female friendships because I'm married. I can't do that. I don't want to be seen as weak. So I have to keep up this facade, but inside I'm broken, right? Inside I am internally going through problems. I don't know what to do. So now I want to run because even at home, I don't feel like my needs are being met. I don't really understand my wife, which is what a lot of couples face, not really understanding each other. Men not understanding women when women not understanding men. I don't understand my wife, but I think if I spill this, she's possibly not going to understand me. So then what do? I run.
Yes.
I run from it.
Yeah.
I know people talk about, because a lot of people discredit men and they're probably going to get upset about it. But you have to realize that they have a different lens that they see through, and they have different life experiences. As women, we have always had the community.
Yeah.
We can call up homegirls right now and be on the phone for 5-6 hours and say, this is what's going on. They can validate our delusion. They can sit here and listen. We have that. Men don't do that.
They don't have that community. I was just talking to my husband about that. I said, babe, men don't have that. Men aren't able to. And it's a lot of society's fault, right? They think that men are supposed to bear the burden of everything and never talk about anything. I've even heard some women say that they don't want a man that cries. They don't want a vulnerable man. And to me, that is, I can't even fathom that.
Girl.
Right? So men don't have that. And so that's why I feel like a lot of men, they are aggressive. I'm sorry. They get angry because anger is the only emotion that is tolerated from men. They don't want a man to cry, but if he's angry, we get that. He's a man. That's what men do. But no, that anger is usually a mask. That aggression is a mask. They need more community. So I'm telling my husband, babe, I'm going to find you community.
Right.
So I met this woman through a program that I have, and her husband and my husband now, they're able to talk. And they have the same morals and stuff. Men need that. I think men need it more than we do. Because like you said, they're carrying so much more than we carry.
Yes. I'm glad you spoke about anger.
Yeah.
Because with working with men, I can tell you the one thing. Now, of course, I always tell people that sometimes you find security in your anger because anger acts as an analgesic. It will numb those deeper emotions, those lower emotions. So with men, signs of weakness sometimes for a man in his mind is if I show sadness, right? If I show hurt, if I show pain, it will make me look weak, right? Because society tells me that vulnerability and showing your emotions is a sign of weakness. Different cultures do that as well, like Nigerian cultures, Japanese cultures, Chinese culture, Asian cultures. A lot of those do that. Britain, Russian, stuff like that. A lot of those cultures and places will teach men that you have to be stoic, you have to be strong, you can't show emotions. You're not supposed to do that. So the emotion that they do feel comfortable showing is anger. Because if I show this anger and I have this rush of blood, it takes away from that feeling of disgust that's in my stomach or that sadness that's pitted in my chest. And so I'm finding security, and my wife is trying to figure out, why are you so aggressive towards me? When you have that moment of vulnerability, why are you so aggressive towards me when we're having this moment of intimacy where we can connect, not understanding that this is his protective mechanism. This is what his mind has been trained to do. His brain has been trained to just show anger because then it's more of a sign of strength, which is a false sign of strength. But it's their security. And so I think that women really need to understand that about men, right? If I, in my mind or in my heart, I feel like I can't be vulnerable here, because then if I show this vulnerability, what is my wife going to see me as? But I can show it with a throwaway. I can show it with it.
That's true.
And I'm probably not gonna like the fact that I called you a throwaway. But you know what?
But call a spade a spade. You know what I mean? Like, but yeah, you're right. Women need to show their men more grace. That is what has helped me now. I'm not perfect. There are still moments where I'm like, babe, and I'm all emotional and stuff. But for the most part, I show my husband a lot of grace. We both show each other grace because we understand that we are fighting battles that we don't understand. He will never know what it's like to be a wife and a mother, and my sacrifices and my feelings. And I will never know what it's like to be a man. So it's a balancing act, showing grace, understanding each other while also trying to make sure that our needs are met and that we are reassured. You know, my husband and I have just got to a place where he can tell me, because I said, babe, if you're sad or anything, tell me. He just got to a place where he can say, babe, you know, this made me feel this way. And I'm glad that he can, but I know that it's hard for him. I know that and I think that's why also a lot of men they run to certain alcohol and like drugs and stuff, because the same way that anger kind of numbs them, that stuff does too. So it's easier. I'm gonna just drink my feelings away. And my husband struggled with that too. There were so many things he struggled with because of all the stuff that he had going on, not justifying it, but saying this was a product of that.
And you know, I love the fact that not only do you still have grace, but you still had empathy for your husband. That was very important to have. There is such a lack of empathy in today's society because of societal expectations. And you have to be able to understand. If you want your marriage to work, you need that understanding. You need that empathy. You need that grace. You need that willingness.
That forgiveness.
Yes. You need that. And in order to reconcile or to restore, forgiveness has to take place. Now, I do believe that people have a choice on whether they want to forgive or not. I'm not saying that you have to reconcile whenever you forgive. I'm not saying that. But if you want to move forward, you have to forgive the offenses in that person, or not, you're going to harbor that resentment and that anger and that bitterness. You don't want to see your partner through the lens of anger. Because you will not be able to move past that.
That's a good point, because one thing I make sure to do that I'm aware of, I'm constantly praying, Lord, help me to see him the way that you do. Because if I'm looking at him with my own natural eyes, my flesh, I'm going to see every fault. I'm going to see everything that he does wrong. And now I'm upset. But if I can see him the way that God sees him, I'm going to be able to show that grace and that love. And I learned that I can only love my husband well if I'm loving him through God. Because if I love him with my own strength, it's going to be a very surface level, conditional love. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear about unconditional love because they think that there's no balance there. God loves us unconditionally. God shows us grace and forgiveness. We have to do that to our spouses too. We got to. And it's hard, but only through God's eyes. Every day I'm like, Lord, help me to see him the way that you see him, because I know you see him as a king. You see him as a precious son. I need to see my husband the way you do. I need to see him and be like, you know what? You may have some flaws, but you are a beautiful man inside and out.
Your relationship with God pours out of you. And that is so beautiful.
Thank you.
I can see you are really a virtuous woman.
Thank you.
And
oh my gosh. I'm gonna cry.
It pours out of you. I respect, for woman, I'm a woman of faith. So we already know that. But to be able to sit with a woman and it pours out of her, in the way that you speak about your husband, regardless of the offenses, the way you speak about your husband, and the way that you still honor God, and the way you speak, your husband is blessed to be able to have you. I'll say that. That's a blessing. But I know God is proud of you for that.
I hope so.
So I definitely know that he's proud of you. It takes a lot to be able to say that this is what I went through, and to be able to share your testimony. That resilience is beautiful in you. I see the strength that's in you, and I appreciate you so much for that. I needed to be able to hear this. It's
Yeah.
always good to be able to see the beauty that comes after these hardships, the beauty that comes after the offenses and the betrayal. That's absolutely beautiful. And I thank you for sharing your story with me.
Thank you for giving me the space to. I hope that other people can see it and be like, you know what?
Definitely.
All hope is not lost. Because me and my husband, we went through all of that. We are best friends. My husband is my best friend. I said, babe, if I gave you a wig and threw some lipstick on you, you'd be the best girlfriend I've ever had. Like, we are still best friends. We're still trying. We'll be married almost 10 years. So, yes. Almost 10
it's
years.
It's gonna help somebody.
Yeah.
It really is.
Amen.
Shout out to us married women.
Yes.
We coming through, baby.
Amen. And it's not easy, but it's nice. It's nice to have other married women see like this is what we do and it works. We can submit to our husbands and obey and not lose ourselves. Right? We can do this.
I'm gonna submit.
Yes.
And they can get mad all they want to.
I'm
gonna submit and shake my legs and I'm gonna
Literally.
smile and be happy when I do.
That's right. That's right. Because guess what? He take care of everything. My husband does stuff for me. He want, okay, but I'm gonna put some gas in your tank. Thank you. You know?
Baby, I say that all the time. Look,
right?
I'm gonna be quiet. I don't have no reason to complain because my baby take care of everything. What?
Yes, the stuff I don't want to do. What? My husband, it's so funny the other day. I know we probably pressed for time, but the other day I was like watching a TikTok video and they were like, my husband never tells me no. And I'm sitting back, my husband don't tell me no either. Babe, can you go to the store for me? Yeah. Babe, you want to come with me here? Yeah. Babe, can you drive? I haven't driven in a car. I haven't driven with my husband in years. My husband drives me everywhere.
Love it.
So it's like, you know, he did all of that, but like there's still goodness. There's still goodness.
But let me tell you something. I'm not just a passenger princess in that Chevy. I'm a passenger princess on this marital life and this marital journey.
Yes. That's what yes.
I always getting the treatment, baby.
This is what obedience gets you. This is what serving gets you. Yes. Girl. Amen.
You all right with me, girl. You all right.
Yes. Amen.
I thank you so much, baby.
Thank you.
I hope this helps someone today. Oh my God. I hope you all receive the healing and the love that it is that you're deserving of. Amen. Thank you all again for tuning in to another episode of Talk to Me, Kittie. I wish you all the best. Happy healing and happy, healthy relationships. Bye, babies.
Bye.